if you want to kind of have, we're not going to read all this because it's a lot of words, but I'll summarize the first couple of chapters. Daniel is like this dude, and has a gift of like, we know stories of like in the Bible, people interpreting dreams and stuff. There's this King Nebuchadnezzar, has a dream, and he basically is trying to find people that are going to interpret this dream for him. He brings in magicians, he brings in all these people that say they're capable of doing such things, and they cannot. And then he actually goes and kills all of them because they didn't do their job correctly. And then Daniel comes in, and then before the king Nebuchadnezzar even speaks, Daniel says, hey, guess what? This was your dream. I'm going to tell you what your dream was first, and then this is what your dream means. And so the king's like, oh my gosh, like not only did he tell me what my dream was, but he told me what my dream actually means. And so that's huge. Daniel has these three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then King Nebuchadnezzar sets up this golden image. And I'm sure we've all heard this story before when we were kids. But this golden image, it's like absolutely huge. It's like some big feet tall. And it's made out of pure gold. And basically the idea is that when all these instruments, the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And if you don't fall down and worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. That is extreme, and it's also real. Like, that's a real thing. We're reading out of the Bible here, and it's, a lot of people think that this is a book full of metaphors, and there's a lot of metaphors in it, but there's also a lot of reality in it. And this is something that really, really happened. And so that's why we're cracking it open today, because this is true, this is real, and even though it took place thousands of years ago, it's still applicable today. And so we're looking into it. And before we even break into the rest of this, I just want to say this is a holla back kind of message, okay? So if I say something good, you can say okay, come on, Brother Luke. You can say, spit that chocolate. You can say, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that. That's where we want to be tonight. That's good. I like that. Come on. Hey, I seriously, I'm so okay with all of it. If you think you're going to interrupt me, you won't, because my voice is probably stronger than yours, and so I'm just going to keep going.
Big guy.
Hashtag keep it humble.
Let's go.
Little flex. Yeah. Okay. So actually, I'm going to pray before we get into this. Actually, no. I'm going to read it, and then we're going to pray. This is Daniel chapter 3, verses 8 to 18. So you guessed it, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They are servants of the Most High God, and when they hear the music, they do not bow down. They're not about that. And so this is what's kind of unfolding. Verse 8 of chapter 3 of the book of Daniel. He says, therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the hornpipe, lyre, trigon, the harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Amen. Let's pray. Hey God, We are coming on night 2, a little bit after 24 hours of this retreat, and we have seen you move, God. We are in the mountains, in the places that you've created. We've seen before in our lives, we've seen the depths of the seas, but now we're up here on top of the mountains, and it is absolutely incredible to see the spectrum of your creation. But we're here tonight because we want to hear from you. As your children, God, we want to hear your voice, not because it's going to, make us feel like we are a better person altogether, that we are more complete, because we can't do that on our own, Lord. We simply want to hear from you just so that we can feel closer to you. We know that the desire of your heart for what Christianity, following Jesus, is supposed to look like is not a grocery list of rules, but it's actually just a relationship. And so, Lord, I pray that is something we focus on tonight. And Lord, throughout the history of this retreat, I have seen firsthand the wind that you are blowing into the sails of this retreat, that this entire thing is fueled by you. And so, Lord, I'm praying that the exact same thing happens tonight, that you would blow wind through my sails, and that it'd be your power and your words speaking through me, because if it's anything from me, then it will be of no benefit to these students. But if it's you, if it's your ideas, your wisdom, joy, peace, patience, and all those things, if it's just you, it changes everything, God. Just as we were singing before, we realize and understand that the ground we are standing on is holy ground, God, that our hearts are burning with this desire, this fire that is completely revolved around a passionate faith about you and following you, Lord. So I pray that we harness that and that we hold fast to it, and that tonight we wouldn't be distracted by anything. If there was maybe something that a student brought into this weekend that maybe they've been holding on to, no matter what it may look like, whether it's depression or anxiety or a broken relationship or a question that they've had on their minds, just like Brendan was talking about last night, we know that you are a God who is not intimidated by our interrogations, God. And so I pray that tonight, if we still have questions, if we still have things that we're carrying, that we would come and lay them at your feet, and you would just show yourselves to us in ways unimaginable, ways that we've never seen before. God, we are expectant for what you're going to do tonight. Lord, I'm in love with you, and I know that most of you, if not all these students are as well. And so let that be something we declare and we show to you just by being with you tonight and hearing your voice. And it's in your beautiful, perfect name we pray. Amen. Amen. And the people said,
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Okay. Awesome. Well, I grew up in Alpharetta. Contrary to popular belief, I was not born on a surfboard in Hawaii. If you were sitting at the dinner table tonight, I got so many of you to believe that's true. That never happens. Who's born on surfboards? I don't know, not me. I was born in Columbus, Ohio, moved to California, and then moved to Alpharetta, Georgia. Alpharetta, I lived there for a majority of my adolescent life. And that sounds so professional. I'm 20 years old, so that was like now. So, I've been in Alpharetta for the majority of my life. If you somewhat know me, you know that I love adventure. And I'm not the kind of person who's gonna like someone says, hey, let's go jump up and go to, this place and do this in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. Ashley Pierce, that's you. It's not me. I'm sorry. It's not me. I'm the kind of person that likes to plan these things out. I'll be like, hey guys, how about next Saturday, not this Saturday, but the one after that, we're going to go in our kayaks and we're going to get in at whatever part of the Chattahoochee, and then we're going to paddle on down to the Chattahoochee Cliff Jumps. Shout out if anyone's ever been there. Most fun place in Alpharetta, Georgia, or Roswell. It's in Roswell. But close. And y'all, I'm the kind of person that loves, though I'm not super spontaneous, like on trips or anything like that, I'm the kind of person that, if you look at me and you see something that a crazy person would do, and you say, yo, I bet you won't do that, I'm going to do it. It's straight up. It's not going to be a thought process that goes on in my mind. It's I'm going to do it. And then I think about these challenges, and I remember this one time I was with Josh Vanderlucht and Micah Jones, and we were paddling, big night, fam. And we paddled down, climbed up the cliffs, and then we were at the top. And there's a 45-foot cliff, which is pretty high, pretty exciting. Jumped off that a few times. Cool, all cool and fun. And then there's also this 65-foot cliff that's a little bit higher, but it's actually a little bit back further in the rock. So you have to run and jump over the excess of the rock to fall in the water. And if you're familiar with cliff jumping and running, you actually, when you jump, you basically have to do flips because your body's going to be revolving forward if you're running and jumping. So, unless you're doing a gainer, which I can't do. But this is going on, and Josh is like, he's like, dude, you should like do that. And I was like, no, bro, I can't do that. And then he's like, well, I bet you won't. Fair enough. So naturally, I do the thing, and I go up to the top, and it's one of those moments where it's like, this is just advice. If you're doing anything crazy in your life, like the longer you wait to do it, the bigger chance that you're not going to do it. So as soon as you get up there, and it's fun with the run and jump because you don't actually see where you're landing. All you see is a rock. And so you just kind of run, and then you just launch yourself. And I did one rotation, and then I landed like into the water, into my ribs. And like it was painful, to say the least. However, the reason I'm telling you this story is because a lot of the times when we do stuff like this, there's two words that start a question that kind of get us to start to have doubts. And those two words are, what if? And so that's going to be the title of this message tonight. It's all based around the idea of like, what if blank happens? And then what if this happens? What's going to be the outcome of this? What's my life going to look like if this happens? And like for me in that story, it's like, okay, well, what if I go down and I get the wind knocked out of me, or I pass out, and then I'm just like in the water? Like, what if blank happens? Then what's going to be the outcome? What should I be scared of? What should I be ready or prepared for if this thing happens? And we see this a lot in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These guys, they are in the heat of it, pun intended, because there's a fiery furnace, and they're in the heat of this moment, and they're probably thinking to themselves, like, I serve a good God, but what if he don't come through this time? The Bible is actually full of what-if questions. Like last night we were talking about Moses, and Moses is starting to question God, like, okay, well, you wanted to give me this staff that I can be able to turn into a snake, and you want me to be able to lead these people and speak in front of them, and that is not my strong suit. So, like, what if I stumble, or what if I do this wrong, or what if I mess up here? And we start to have all these what-if questions. Like Joseph's brothers also did this when, the story of Joseph, the guy with the coat of many colors, and then all of his brothers threw him into slavery, and then he works his ways up the ranks in Egypt, and then eventually his brothers actually need to go to him for something, and they're thinking to themselves, well, what if Joseph holds a grudge? What if this happens? What if we go to him and ask for help, and then he just pays us back for all the things we've done to him? What if blank? And then what are we going to do about it? So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. What ifs go a lot deeper than what we think. And I ask what if because that's such a centerpiece of our lives if we are living in a worldly sense. I think the world wants us to believe that we're supposed to live in doubt, that we're supposed to live in this mindset that we're not capable of doing a lot of things, because the reality is if you step out just a little too far into your out of your comfort zone, then you're actually going to find yourself somewhere that you don't want to be, and you're going to mess up, you're going to fail, you're going to start to experience a lot of oppression and persecution. So you should just be careful. Maybe don't shine your light too bright, because you will face things that you had no idea were coming. And so we start to have these questions, and it is a centerpiece of our lives if we listen to the world trying to fill us with this doubt. And I want to say right off the bat that anything can happen. That God is the God of miracles. He is God. He is Jehovah Jireh. He is the one who has known everything. He's always been. He always will be. And he has a plan. He has a will for each and every one of our lives. But anything can happen. And things sometimes don't always go our way. And that's when we start to have questions. That's when, like last night we were talking about the idea that we have interrogations for God, and we have things that we don't understand. I was sitting in a group of freshman and sophomore guys last night, and just going around the circle with things that, like, what are your doubts about God? And something I heard quite frequently was like, why does God do blank? Like, if this is happening, what if this happens and then that leads to this? And we start to have these questions, and we get so confused and so caught up in the moment. And this is a lifestyle that will consistently lead us to deprave ourselves of a relationship with God that he wants to give to us, but we're leaning into other things that are going to fill you with nothing but uncertainty and doubt and fear. And fear will always rob you of the relationship that God wants to have with you every single time. And so we're moving out of fear into faith tonight. That's the goal. Moving on, anything can happen. You're not free from it, and there is not an easy life guarantee. This is absolutely huge. Something I wrote down right here in quotes was this question that I think is a very sobering question if we actually think about it, and we have to question ourselves. What if my longings aren't met, my fleshly longings, the things that I myself want? What if my longings aren't met and my nightmares come true? Is God enough? That's the question. If everything that I've ever wanted falls through the cracks, is God still enough? And that's a question for a freshman girl, and that's a question for an 85-year-old man. If everything doesn't go according to plan, is God still going to be enough? Like, I have longings in my heart that are going to last a whole lifetime. Like, I know for a fact that I want to have a wife and kids one day. I know that I want to be able to have a ministry one day that I can, work in, and that ministry is going to flourish, and no matter what that's going to look like, I know that I want to have grandkids one day. I want to be able to have the money from a job that's going to be able to pay for my daughter's prom. I have these ideas in my mind. I want to have these things, but God does not promise us a single one of those. And that is like I said, a sobering thought, that life sometimes doesn't go according to our plans, but is God enough? At the beginning of this year, I got a Christmas gift from my parents to me was a spiritual experience retreat by myself in the woods, which does not, didn't cost them any money. So it's not a Christmas gift. It's more just like, hey, do this. And so I basically hiked in the woods all the way up to the top of this mountain. And it was 45 hours long was the amount of time. It was overnight, and I didn't bring my phone. I didn't bring anything. I just went with my Bible and a backpack that had tenting stuff and a sleeping bag, all these things. And so I went up, and the whole purpose of this trip was that I would just hear a word from God and be able to start my year out with something that I can hold on to for the rest of my year and hopefully the rest of my life. And so my whole prayer going up this walk was God, I just want to hear one thing from you. More things if possible, but if not, if that's not what you have in mind, just let me hear one thing that you want to say to me that's going to rock my world. And what he said to me, not audibly, but I heard it in my heart, he said, let me satisfy you. And I think that was kind of the start to a whole season of contentment in my life from then to now, and this understanding that I don't absolutely need anything except Jesus. And that is so hard to do in the day that we live in, but that is the truth, that we don't need anything besides Jesus. And so my word for 2019 became satisfy, and that is going back to the question of if your longings are met and your nightmares come true, is God enough? We have to understand that our biggest fears fall short of God and him being enough for us and him having the ability to satisfy our longings. And it's like, you can look at the idea that, I know in Psalms it says that God gives us the desires of our hearts. And that, if you look into the context of that, you start to understand a little bit more. And that is actually taken out of context so many times. But the reality is that God understands what you want. He understands your longings, and he, in his own plan, in his own will, he has all of it mapped out, and he's not going to take anything from us if it's going to, not give him more glory. His goal is that things would be done for our good and his glory, and so no matter what he's doing, he's actually doing it for our good and for his glory. And if the desire of your heart is that you would have a family one day, that's amazing. But also you have to be so okay with the idea that you might grow old and single and be single for the rest of your life. And that has to be okay with each and every one of us, because we're not finding our security in the longings of our flesh, but actually in the satisfaction that our Father can give us. And that's what life is supposed to look like. That's it. And, okay, so moving on. I got the opportunity last Friday to sit down with one of my good friends, Micah Apon, at the original Pancake House in Alpharetta, Georgia, which, like, oh my goodness, y'all. I had a Groupon, $12 for $30 worth of food, and so we ate big. It was incredible. I love breakfast food. And we joke all the time when we're together. We got to work at a camp last summer together, and he just kind of was like my co-counselor the whole summer. And we joked all the time, but also there was times where we were sitting on the porch outside having the deepest, realest conversations, tears rolling down our face, and just like understanding that we are so little in this world. And getting to sit back down with him for the first time in a while last Friday, we started talking about this idea that we feel so entitled to things in our life. Like, we feel entitled to having a steady job. You feel entitled to eventually one day having a family, or eventually, having a girlfriend, or the girlfriend you have now, or boyfriend you have now. Like, this relationship is awesome, and it's going to stay awesome, and then we're going to go to the same college, or college is relatively close, and then we're going to get engaged and married, and life is going to be amazing once I'm with them forever. And we have all of these things, but we are not promised any of those. We're not entitled to any of those things. And we get so confused, like, even going at the opposite side of the spectrum, like, the pain that we receive, we have to be as good a steward of the pain we're receiving as we are a steward of the talents he's given us. Mm-hmm. Like, the talent he's given you, if you're really good at speaking, or if you're really good at worship leading, or if you're really good at leading or discipling people that are younger than you, that's awesome, that's a talent. You better be using that and stewarding that gift well. But if he's putting painful things in your life, if he's allowing you to go through the trenches, we better be as good of a steward as that as we were of the talents that he's given us. And that, again, is a much harder idea to wrap our heads around. That the car accident that my friend just got into, I got to think about how I'm going to use this for everyone else's good and for God's glory. Or the friend that just passed away from cancer, I got to figure out how I'm going to steward that pain and use this for God's glory. That is a much harder mindset to have than just realizing that, I'm entitled to just having a job. I'm entitled to just going throughout life and just doing the day-to-day things. That's not what God's plan for us was. We have to come to this realization, and if you write or remember a single thing from this whole message, I don't care if you forget everything else. Please don't forget this. This is a realization that I had yesterday that rocked my world. This is something that I think I myself have found myself doing almost my entire life between me and my relationship with God. And I think so many other people do this as well. And if you're doing it, then I promise you, you're doing it all wrong. And this is going to hurt for a few of you, because I was bawling in my parents' kitchen last afternoon when I started thinking about this. This is the realization. What if the foundation of my desire to be faithful is an expectation for God to pay me back? What if the foundation of my desire to be faithful is an expectation for God to pay me back? And what I mean by that is, what if our faith is not so much relational as it is transactional? Like, what if my faith is predicated upon the idea that, I'm going to worship God, I'm going to praise God, I'm going to follow God, he's so worthy, he's so awesome, he's so amazing, I'm going to give up sports, I'm going to give up some of my best friendships, or if those things are pulling me away from God, I'm going to push them away because I love God. What if we are actually subconsciously doing that because we're expecting a blessing from God later in life? Or we're expecting that once we maybe get to eternity, that's when it's all going to be worth it. Because that is true. That is when it's going to be worth it. But since when has God, just being God, not been worthy of our praise? And that is a sobering thought, that we would we would be so confused as to believe that God just by himself is worthy of everything, and instead we start to think, okay, maybe if I'm just praising him, maybe if I'm just loyal to him, that one day he would actually be able to give me the nice family that I have a longing for, or the son or daughter I've been hoping for. And if we are doing that, then that is a transactional faith. And I pray, for myself included, that all of us, we would move away from transactional faith with God and move towards a relational faith with God and just say, God, you created the heavens and the earth. You always have been and you always will be. That alone is enough and worthy of my praise. And if we would do that, if we would focus our minds around that, make that the relational foundation of what this faith actually looks like, everything can change. Every single thing. It is a crazy idea, and we have to ask ourselves the question, does God owe us anything? No. God does not owe us a single thing. We were the ones that betrayed him. We were the ones that were adulterous, the ones that walked away. Yet just like Hosea chased Gomer, Hosea literally chased her all the way to the place where she was like on a slave block, selling herself to anyone offering anything. And Hosea says, hey, I'm going to pay for her. And I shouldn't have to because she's my wife. And yeah, I get it, she was once a prostitute, but she's my wife. And in Psalms 96, it talks about, when God is the creator of the earth and he owns all things. He created us and everything that is in the world. And so there is ownership between us and God. And just like a man and woman, when they get married, become one flesh, there is ownership between the two. And Hosea is probably approaching this situation, saying to this auctioneer who's standing here, hey, I know that you're probably trying to make some money off of this whole thing, but she's my wife. And the auctioneer says, hey, I don't care who you say she is, this is her price. And that's exactly what happened with Jesus and us. That we were married to him because he created us, and we have this sense of ownership between the two, but then we were the ones that were adulterous and ran away, and now he has chased you down and found you on this slave block, again, selling yourself to anything that's going to make us feel like we have some sense of security. And the auctioneer, the devil, is looking back and saying, hey, I understand that you created them, but because of what they've done, this is the price, the blood of your son. And God says, very well, I'll send my son. And he pays for someone that he already owns, us. God does not owe me anything. So why would we feel entitled to more? Why would we start to map out the rest of our lives? Why would we start to think that we have all this in our hands? God simply looks back at you and says, you can start to ask the questions, what if blank happens? But instead, I want you to move from a what if mindset to actually an even if mindset. Even if blank happens, God's with me through it. That's exactly what happens in the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They start to experience this hardship, and they're about to get thrown into a fire. And Nebuchadnezzar, after they say this audacious statement, they say, hey, guess what? Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And so Nebuchadnezzar cranks up the furnace 7 times hotter, and he throws them into it. Throws them into the fire. And the people that throw these men into the fire also get burnt up because of how hot this fire is. And if you don't know the end of the story, there is another in the fire. And Hillsong United just released a new song called Another in the Fire, and it is absolutely incredible. But the whole idea of this is that, hey, guess what? Even if blank, God's in the fire with me. He's in the fire with me, and he knows what your hardships, your pain feels like. Isaiah was talking about it this morning. He knows what it's actually like. He knows what temptation feels like, and he's with you in it. And so it's not so much okay, well, what if blank happens, and what is my life going to look like? It's actually even if blank happens, God's in the fire with me. And that's the kind of mindset that we need to shift ourselves with. If you see, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were not promised deliverance. One time, they were not promised it. And they probably had the idea like, okay, well, if God's going to save me, he's probably going to save me before I get thrown into the fire. And that's not what happened. You know, they weren't promised deliverance for a second. Yet they said, even if he doesn't, we're not going to bow down to what you want us to do. And so that's what this mindset actually is. It's saying, even if blank happens, even if, you guys want to gossip about him or her, okay, I understand that you guys want to do that, but even if that's happening, I'm not going to be a part of it. Or, oh, you want me to go to the party, you want me to drink or smoke a little bit. Hey, that's not going to happen because I'm not thinking, what if that happens and how's that going to affect my life? I'm just saying, even if the life is hard, the struggle is hard, and the temptation's right there, and I understand how hard it is or how easy it is to just go and be with the football team and just cuss around and say all these terrible things. I've been there. I know what it's like. I understand how hard the temptation is, but Jesus is saying to us, hey, guess what? Even if you go through those things, I'm going to be right there with you. That's the promise he makes us. He doesn't promise us entitlement to anything. He doesn't promise us a fun and easy life. He doesn't promise you any of those things. Instead, he pushes those to the side and says, hey, I want to make you a promise. I promise you that no matter what fire you're going through, I'm right there in it with you. And even if you thought I was going to pull you out of it before you went through the fire, guess what? It might hurt a little bit. You might feel a little bit of the burn, but I'm going to be in the fire with you. And if you follow through with the story, you see how Nebuchadnezzar actually sees this event unfold, and he actually turns his whole city around to say, okay, the God that these three men follow is the God of the Most High. He is the Alpha and the Omega, and he starts to understand who God actually is because of the faithfulness of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They moved from a what-if mindset to a even-if mindset. Facing fire requires two things. It requires the destruction of asking what if to the creation of knowing even if. Destroying the question and accepting the acknowledgement that even if blank happens, he's in the fire with me. And so it's a decision. It's a decision between what if and even if. And that's all I kind of had to talk about this part. But I don't know, I think talking about the rest of this weekend, I don't know where any of y'all are at. I'm not God. I don't know, I'm not inside your heads and know the questions you may have or the doubts you may still have. And I know a few, like I said, in the group I was in last night, we voiced our questions and our doubts. We made them known to everyone, but I don't know deep down in your hearts and souls where your doubts lie anymore. And last night we talked about interrogating God and this question of what actually is this relationship actually look like, and how are you going to use this? What's going to happen? What if blank happens? We have these questions, and so I'm asking y'all tonight, if you still have those questions, I'd like to talk about a story that a lot of us actually know as the story of Doubting Thomas. And it's coined that term, Doubting Thomas. And Louis Giglio at Passion Conference on Session 6 this past 3 months ago talked about this story in the most incredible way, because Thomas is this guy, and everyone else is starting to talk about these moments that they've had encountering Jesus. And Thomas is the guy that hasn't seen him yet. It's everyone's oh yeah, we understand that he died, but hey, guess what? He came back and he showed himself to us, and it was the coolest, most craziest thing ever. And Thomas is okay, but what about me? I want to have a little bit of reassurance that he's here again. I want to know, I want to see him, I want to put my hands in the holes that are in his hands, and I want to put my hand in the puncture wound on his ribs. I want to physically see it and feel it. and they're in this room, and the doors are locked. Like, they're kind of in hiding. And then all of a sudden, Jesus just appears. And I like to believe that he probably just like walked through the door, like actually through the door. I don't know how he did it, but I like to believe that it's something like that because they say very clearly the doors are locked and the walls are sealed. And so Jesus probably just kind of walks through the wall or something like that. And everyone's just like, Jesus, good to see you again. And everyone's like, oh, good to see you again and again because you're dead. And then you came back and I saw you then, but I saw you again. But Thomas, this is his first time. This is his first time seeing Jesus after his death and resurrection. And Thomas is here, and Jesus, I like to believe that Jesus just says to him, he goes, Thomas, like, I understand your questions. Like, I understand your desire to actually really, really want to know who I am and what my goal and the plan of what everything was going on. I understand that you wanted all of those things and the answers to those questions. I just want you to know I'm here. You want to put your fingers in the holes in my hands? Here you go. And Jesus lets him do it. He goes, oh, you want to put your hand into the wound in my side where I was stabbed after I was already dead? You want to, go ahead, lift his robe up. It's probably more like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what it looks like, but he basically is allowing Thomas to investigate. He says, oh, you got questions. Okay. I don't care. Because I promise you, the more you dive in, the deeper you question, the more you interrogate me, the more that you're actually going to find out how real, honest, true, and how the things I promised you came to fruition. Everything you're looking for, it's just as I said it was going to be. It's right here for you. You just have to look a little bit harder. And if you're new to this faith, or if you've been doing this for a while, I promise, like, welcome to the next 80 years of discovering Jesus, because it's going to take that long. And it's probably going to take even longer than that, because this book has so much depth within it. There's so many stories, so many things about Jesus, and there's so much that we can just get immersed in. It's going to take probably till the day we die and are with him for eternity that we will actually understand the person that Jesus is and what God's will and plan for our lives was. We're not going to understand it until we're with him in eternity, but I would love to spend the rest of my life trying to figure out who he is, trying to know him, and then making him known, because that's what we're here to do, is to know God and to make God known. That's the goal. That's exactly what our lives are supposed to revolve around. If you're looking for something of what my life is actually supposed to look like, I don't know what my passion is, or I don't understand what my purpose is, or how I'm supposed to actually go throughout this life while following Jesus and doing it well, just remember that I'm supposed to know God and make God known. It's a simple phrase, and it makes everything so much easier. And again, just coming to a close now, if you have questions, like, don't hesitate to reach out to God. Don't hesitate to do it. And something that I was talking to middle school students about on yesterday morning was this idea that Jesus left us with the Holy Spirit. Like we see in the end of most of the books of the gospel, that after Jesus has died, resurrected, come back, and now he's actually about to ascend to heaven forever before he comes back again, which he promised us he would do. He actually says, hey, guess what? There's one greater than me that's coming to be with you. Talking about the Holy Spirit. He says there's one that's greater than me. And we can fantasize about what it would be like to walk throughout life with Jesus and say, oh, I can actually see Jesus perform miracles. That would sure boost my faith. It would be awesome to walk with Jesus in person. But Jesus is saying, hey, there's one greater than me who's coming to be with you. And it's not going to be right next to you. It's going to be inside of you. The Holy Spirit. And he actually says, don't leave Jerusalem until you've received the Holy Spirit. That's how imperative it is that we pull on the Spirit. And I think, like, this is not written down in the Bible, but this is just like speculation. The idea that, the disciples, like, after Jesus, like, died, I wonder what was going on in their minds. I wonder if they were, focusing on the idea, like, oh man, like, I wish that I would have just, like, pulled on this, I wish I would have known the plan that Jesus was going to say. Like it's written all throughout. They're like probably wondering, Jesus is all these people following him now, and there's people laying palm trees as he's walking by a donkey into the city now, and they're probably thinking, oh, this is it. This is where it's going to happen. He's going to overthrow the whole kingdom. The Roman Empire is going down. The King of Kings is here, and he's here to claim his throne. This is where it's going to happen. And then he's crucified. They're like, this was not part of the plan. And they're probably starting to, have these questions. Okay, well, I thought A was going to happen, but now B is happening, and this is not what I was expecting. And I wonder that after they died, they would have, started, after Jesus died, if they would have started to have this question of like, I wonder if I spent so much time as a disciple of Jesus, following him for 2.5 to 3 years of his ministry, so much time, waiting for the moment he's going to overthrow everyone. And waiting for the moment that he's going to take his throne and just asking him, hey, Jesus, when's it going to happen? I spent so much time wasting that, and I did not focus on the idea that Jesus was right in front of me. The Son of God, right in front of me. And I don't want us to fall into that same trap as Christians. That we would not be the kind of people that start to focus on the future of life and think, oh, I wonder when Jesus is going to let this thing come to fruition, this thing that I have a longing for, that I kind of feel like I'm entitled to. I wonder when this is all going to actually work out in the end. And if we would just be like, I have the Holy Spirit within me, a direct connection to God. The God who always has been and always will be, if we would focus so much more on that and understand that he is worthy alone for that, then I think our lives would drastically change inside and out. It's not going to be a change of circumstances in your life. It's actually just going to be a change of mindset. And so, bring this thing full circle. I know the band's going to come back up, and we're going to sing a song called Worthy. And when we sing this song, I want us to think about that phrase. That we would not have our foundation of our desire to be faithful based in an expectation for God to pay me back, but that we would just say, God is God, and that's worthy enough of my praise. And that we would adopt that mindset while we're preaching, or while we're singing, and that we would just sing it loud and say, God, you are worthy because you are God, and that is enough. And that there's nothing more that I want to pull on. There's nothing else in life that I want to try to find any source of security for, that you are God alone, and that is worthy of my praise. So we're going to sing that, and as they get started, I'm just going to pray over us. And this is probably going to be a long prayer, because that's what always happens at the end of my messages, but we're just going to do it. So if you guys want to stand up and kind of prepare your hearts to worship, I'm just going to pray over us. We're going to sing to the God of all creation. God, Father, Dad, you are God. 3 little letters that we have lost the association with in our lives. The definition of that has gotten so skewed in this place that we call earth. And Lord, I want to bring it back, that we would scrap any definition that we've ever read before, thought of ourselves before, and that we would say, God, you are the God, and you are my God, and I get to have a relationship with you, and you being God and allowing that to happen, that alone is worthy of me to drop every single thing I have going on in my life, to just focus on you and you alone. It's enough. And God, I found myself being that person, that teenage guy that is looking for some source of security in the party or the alcohol or the girls or the identity of thinking all those other things are going to make me feel like I have some sense of security. I've been there, God, and I'm scared and I'm terrified of the reality that is so many of the high school students that are in this room now, but also across the entire nation. And they've believed the lie that they need to look horizontally for who they find their identity in. Because God, you are God. Emmanuel, God with us. You came down to earth and you lived a perfect life for 33 years. You paid the price on a cross. You paid for me. owe me a thing. And so, Lord, I pray that our hearts would shift from something of like a what if blank happens? What if the car accident doesn't work out? What if my family falls apart? What if my parents never love each other again? What if my friend dies of cancer? What if I don't get into the school of my dreams? What if nothing in my life works out? If all of those things happen, are you still enough? And God, I pray that when we ask that question, that there would be not a hesitation in our hearts that it's true and that it's you, and yes, you are enough, and that you alone satisfy my heart. It's you and you alone, nothing else. And God, I pray that if we falter or if we fall off the beaten path and if those things happen, I pray that it won't take long for us to snap out of it and realize, what on earth am I doing? Because it's you and it's only you. And God, we're coming off the mountain tomorrow morning. Lord, I know that that is a scary and a not fun thing to do, to be so close to you where it can feel like we were walking side by side with you on top of the mountain. We feel like we have your presence right there with us. And just like Peter, he was walking with Jesus for 2.5 years, and then Jesus dies, and then Peter finds himself denying knowing him and then going right back to fishing. And God, I pray that we would not fall into the same temptation. That we may have come up to this weekend living a life that we are not proud of, but now that we're here living and breathing in the air that you are putting around us, and that we are experiencing what this life actually looks like, and then we're walking back down the mountain, and it may seem like you might have died back on the mountain, and that we feel alone in the fire. But God, we are declaring tonight that we are changing our minds. That our foundation is not based on what ifs, but it's based on even ifs. And we're declaring that we know that if we're going into the fire, that we understand that even if we are seeking deliverance from you, that even if it doesn't come before the fire, that you are there in the fire, and that you've been there before, and that you will always be there, and that nothing is ever going to change that. Lord, I pray and I declare that over this people in this room, I declare that over this generation, that we are going to be the kind of people that understand the fire may be hot. It might be 7 times hotter than it was for the other people, and this life seems like it's crumbling, falling apart, but this life is exactly where you wanted me to be. This life is exactly where you saw me to be. You knit me together in my mother's womb. You knew the fires I would have to walk through, and so you came down to earth, and you jumped into the fire, and you jumped into hell, and you defeated it in 3 days and rose again so that I could be with you forever. God, I pray that that's real for us. That that's not some fairy tale love story. God, forget Romeo and Juliet or The Notebook. This is the greatest love story we've ever seen, we've ever heard of, and you're doing it right here for us, God. So don't let us believe any other lies, except that you are God, and that you are good, and that you are enough, and that you will always be. You're right here with me, and you're right here with all the rest of us. God, we're obsessed with you. And so we declare that you are worthy of our praise. And no matter what mountains we might be hiking through, or the depths of the valleys that we might be finding ourselves in, you are worthy because you are God, and that is enough.